Alright, so what's your name?
My name is John Wemhoner.
And where did you work?
I worked out at Bridger Coal.
Okay, and what was your job title?
For 5.5 years underground, I was a mechanic electrician. And then for about 3.5 years on the surface, I was a helper and a blaster. I got to blow stuff up.
All right, and what kind of process was it to blast?
It was kind of a long process. They set up plans for the drillers to go in and drill holes, and they, depending on what we're blasting, whether it's hard rock or coal, determines the size of the hole. So they'll drill basically a 1-foot hole, and then they just drill hundreds of those. And after the holes are drilled, we go in and put in the product, which is ANFO, ammonium nitrate and fuel oil. Go in there, we put that in, put some kind of cap, detonating cap, and a booster in there, and then we tie all the rows of holes in together, and the day we're ready to blast, we call it out. We got about a 5-minute warning for a shot, and then once we're ready, we have this little, it's just a metal tube about this long with a 22 blank, or it's basically the cap for a shotgun shell, and a little pin hits that and sends a signal down, and it's cool.
All right.
I can show you a really cool video of it.
And what's the environmental impact of that?
It all depends on who you're asking.
Well, just for someone who just wants to know, like, what happens to the land, and then what happens with the land after you're done using it.
So, what happens to the land initially is you have, let's say you have a 20-foot coal seam, and you've got 300 feet of, or 400 foot of soil that's above that you need to move. So you'll blast that out, you put it out, you dig the coal out, and you keep doing that till you've gone as far as the coal is, and after we're done, we have an entire group of people that go out and reclaim it. Mm-hmm. They take the dirt that was moved from here and they move it back to where it was, and they make just, it looks like it never was touched. They reseed it. They so all the original vegetation is right back where it was, and the only thing we've done is remove the coal from underneath it.
Okay. And do you believe coal is one of the most important natural resources of today?
I believe it's one of the most important natural resources for Wyoming. We have Black Butte, we have mine in Evanston, we have Bridger Coal, the entire northeast portion of the state of Wyoming is driven by the coal market. It's one of the many things that are here. I think it's one of our most important resources that we have. It's too abundant not to use.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, and I'll be getting back in touch if needed.
No problem. Glad to help.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a great Friday. I'm just finishing up my documentary project. I just got done with my interview, so I'm glad we could do this together. The process I'm going to be going over today is called open cut mining. Open cut mining is where they don't go underground. They just dig a hole where they believe the coal to be, and they mine it out, and then they fill it all back in and try to get it back to normal before they blow a hole in it. So I'm going to be going over the process like that. I'm going to go from where they started to what happens to the coal at the very end when it gets to the plant. And then from there, I have an interview you guys can watch, and I have a paper for you guys to review. All right, so let's get started. In the first step of the process of open cut mining, they have to remove the topsoil. So they plow away the topsoil, which opens up the next layer of dirt and hard rock and all that. And then from there, they drill, holes in a huge pattern across this land mass that they want to move, and they make it in a large pattern, and they fill those holes with explosives. After doing that, they blow up the explosives, and it blows the entire landmass into a hole. And the pile of dirt that's left over, they remove the coal from, and they move the dirt out of the way into a safe haven while they take the coal out and they try to transport it away. The coal right now is in huge trunks. It's like giant pieces of rock, okay? So they're just loading it onto trucks to get it out of the way. After that, they'll keep doing this until they find all the coal, and then once they're done, they'll start, reclaiming the land for what it was before they started blasting. Now, when they load the coal, they load it into trucks using these giant diggers. And the trucks then take the coal to a giant conveyor belt, which takes it over to a stockpile. The stockpile is a giant mound of just coal, just huge, big pieces of coal, and it's all piled into a giant pile. And what happens from there is that from the stockpiles, the trucks then load it onto another conveyor belt, which takes the coal to get crushed. The coal is going to get crushed to about pebble size. And from there, it's going to be a little bit easier to carry, a little bit more maneuverable, and they're going to be able to do more with it. So from there, they'll take the crushed coal and they'll put it on another conveyor belt, which takes it either to a truck or a barge, depending on where you are. Because if it's on like a beach or something, they'll put it on a barge. The barge will then take it out to a cargo ship, and the cargo ship will then take it to another nation or wherever they need to go. Now, if it's here in town, it's a little different. They put it on a truck, stockpile it, and then they put the stockpile into giant semis, and the semis then take it elsewhere, where they can take it anywhere they want. They can take it to Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, wherever they need to take the coal, whoever bought it, And once they ship it out, they're shipping it to plants, like these giant power plants. And once they arrive at the power plants, they do the exact same thing again. They drop it into a stockpile and they head back for the rest. Now, from the stockpile, the power plant kind of has access to this entire mound of just coal. And the power plant runs on the coal as it produces energy using the coal for other people. And how does it generate electricity, you ask? Well, it's actually kind of a really cool and intuitive process. I didn't know a lot about it until, I started getting more in depth about it. And now that I see what goes into it, I'm more appreciative of what we have, like my phone that I'm recording, to charge it, the TV, the lights, like everything that we have really runs off this process. So it's very cool, and it's very nice to know that we have people that do this process almost every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to make sure that we have the demand in electricity that we need. Now, when the coal arrives at the coal plants, it is unloaded into a stockpile, like I said. And from there, it is taken by a reclaimer. A reclaimer is like a giant crane, okay? And at the end, there's a wheel. And on the wheel, there's little buckets. And it's spinning, picking up the coal. Well, in the middle of this crane, there's a conveyor belt. And it's picking up the coal, bringing it around, dropping it on the conveyor belt, riding down the conveyor belt. Then from here, it drops it onto another conveyor belt, which then it transports into the plant. Now, when it goes into the plant, it'll go into these giant storage containers, okay? And what it'll do there is that it'll go into these giant containers that have like a filter at the bottom. So if you ever seen an hourglass, it's kind of like that, just half an hourglass. And from there, it's dropping that onto another conveyor belt, which then takes it into what is called a pulverizer. Now, a pulverizer is a really cool and dangerous machine. Like what it does, it's taking millions and millions of pounds of coal and it's crushing it from pebbles to powder. Like you won't be able to see it anymore. So there's so much coal that needs to be crushed that by the time it comes out of the pulverizer, it's nothing but powder. It's like baking soda. When you throw it in the air, or flour, you just throw it in the air and it just kind of like disperses. It's like that. It's really powder now. And from there, they transport it from the pulverizers into what they call a boiler. Now, a boiler is a pretty cool machine, actually. When it goes into the boiler, there's a lot of hot water and a lot of there's a lot of really hot water being boiled top temperature in these things. And what it's doing, it's boiling the coal, which is releasing a sort of steam, and the steam rises into these coils, which then a fan blows the steam down this pipe. And what the pipe does is that it turns a turbine. And the steam is really heavy. It's really heavy steam. So it's pushing this turbine really fast. And it's turning the energy from thermal energy into physical energy or kinetic. It's really cool. They're taking steam and they're turning a turbine with it by blowing the steam into it. And it's creating kinetic energy, and it's powering an alternator. So from there, it's powering this turbine at top speed, and it's producing a ton of electricity, which is a nice, awesome process because there's a lot of stuff that goes into it that we would never really know unless we really did some in-depth thinking and research about it. So the steam goes into the turbine turns extremely fast. Now, this turbine is moving so fast and it's creating so much electricity, it's creating 34,481 amps every time I think every hour. That's a lot. So after the steam turns the turbine, the power that it generates from that turbine spinning is then stored and then sent off to the consumer, us. So when you turn on your TV, it most likely came from a power plant that went through this process using the coal. And the process of the coal is it's insanely big, and it's very creative. I never knew that. I thought you just burn coal in a furnace, and the furnace did something, but no, it's a really cool process where they turn it from coal into steam that turns a turbine that creates physical energy that they send off to us. So that's a really cool process, right? And I have an interview in here who talks more in depth. He worked with this kind of stuff, and he did a lot of what they call the blasting. And he said that it was a really cool experience and that he was happy to help. But this has been my documentary on open pit mining, and I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you guys understand a little bit more about the mining process and how it works. And if you have any questions, I'd really be delighted if you hit me up, and I'll be able to answer any questions that you have. All right, thank you.